Hello, and welcome to the Pokemon XD Gala Darkness Minimum Battles Challenge. What that means is that I can only do required fights throughout the game. I can't deviate from a linear path. So, the Pokemon we choose during this playthrough will have to be very specific, and our levels are going to be fairly low and or average. So, let's go ahead and get right into it. At the start of the game, we're given our Eevee. Ours has a calm nature, which raises its special defense and lowers its attack, which is probably going to be pretty useful for the Eevee I have in mind for this run. And right here, we have our first battle against Chobin. Now, down in the bottom corner, or somewhere on the screen, I'm going to be adding a little counter to show how many battles have been going on. So keep an eye on that whenever you see a battle happen, and correct me if I mess up. Our second teammate is Teddiursa here, and this will be our companion through the rest of the game, along with our Eevee. So we now go to Agate Village, where we have our first battle, and we evolve into Espeon. Now, whether or not this is the correct choice is a bit questionable, but I think because both Ursaring and Espeon are at the top of my tier list, that should show just how good they are. Maybe Vaporeon would have been better, simply because it has Ice and Water type moves, but I think you have to go out of your way for Vaporeon's better Water type move. So I think Espeon is the clear choice in this run. It also has the Synchronize ability, which makes it so that any status ailments it gets are inflicted back onto the opponent who gave them to me. So that's going to be kind of helpful sometimes. Another thing is there are 5 required opponents in Agate Village. It's the 5 people leading up to Teddiursa being purified. And one of the things that is going to hurt the time just a little bit on this run, because I decided I would time it, may as well, is that I have to spend a little extra time picking up items from chests to sell for the Vivid Scent, otherwise I'm stuck running around for purifying Teddiursa. So this way I can just use all the Vivid Scents from the money I got from chests and whatnot, and purify it a little faster. And as you can see, I didn't even have enough, so I had to go back into the Pokemart to go grab a couple more. And with that, I can now go and fight Egan and de-Shadowfy my Teddiursa, who has a hardy nature, which is neutral stat gains, so it could be better, but honestly, I think Teddiursa's probably going to be fine with that. It's not too bad. It has the pickup ability, which might come in clutch later if I happen to pick up a rare candy or something, but might also just end up being useless. And these are the moves it gets after being de-Shadowfied. Most importantly, it has Return, which is going to be very strong later on. I now go to Mount Battle, where there are 3 required fights. There's this lady, and then this guy, and then there's a kid at the end who Vander is teaching, right here. And then after that, I have to go to the Cypher Peon base, which has the Power Rangers. And one thing I didn't know, so I thought I didn't have to face any of them, I could just go in, but apparently you have to beat at least one. I did try just battling and losing to one, and reset, but apparently you have to beat at least one. So I decided to go for Brown because I think he has the least amount of Pokemon, the least amount of experience, and I think it makes the most sense for this challenge to keep it in the spirit of not really doing too many Pokemon fights. If you can, keep the number low. Anyway, now that we're in the Cypher base, we have 11 more fights to do before we get to Laverina. And just because I skipped the Power Ranger segment, I would like to just go ahead and move my normal rambling spot to here, because we have a lot of battles to do. If you like this video, give it a like. If you'd like to see more of this type of content, consider subscribing. And I'm in need of Pokemon suggestions, so if you have any Pokemon, please put them down below. Right here I get the move Confusion, which is going to replace Tackle right away, because my core is basically going to be Espeon, the strong special attacker, because it has 130 base special attack, and Teddiursa, the big strong physical attacker, because it has 130 physical attack. So the idea is I could just pivot the two. If I need something on the physical side or something on the special side, they both get their job done. Right here I'm going to try to catch Carvanha, simply because it has the black glasses, which is going to help a bit for Espeon's damage. And another side effect of this being minimum battles and not a single Pokemon run is that I can actually catch and use Carvanha because he is on the path. So I go ahead and throw a Pokeball at it, and hopefully it catches right away. I use Return on Magnemite, not going to do that much damage, but neither of my Pokemon can really hit the Steel type too well. And Carvanha's caught, so he will be an important player during this run. And we're only a few fights away from getting to Lavrina, but I'd like to point out the levels of our Pokemon. If you saw there, they're both level 17. The Pokemon we're facing are only a few levels below me, and that's going to be a trend that you see throughout the rest of the game, more or less, because apparently this game is pretty well built for the minimum battles only challenge, as long as you only have 2 Pokemon. And we are now at our first fight. This is Lavrina. She leads with a Love Disc and a Beautifly. So I'm going to bite the Beautifly and also return it because it's not going to be a one-shot. Water Gun's not really doing that much damage because Espeon is actually pretty specially tanky, especially with the calm nature as well, helping that. Now level 19, I'm not going to learn Fake Tears. If it worked on both opponents it'd be good, but it's a single Pokemon only, and it's not worth wasting the move. So I go for Confusion and return into Roselia. Hopefully I can one-shot the Roselia, but I do not. So it's not the end of the world, I guess. Roselia does get a Leech Seed up, which is a little scary because now I'm on a bit of a timer. But I think between the combined efforts of Espeon and Teddiursa, I should be able to take down the Delcatty. Oh, and it is her first Shadow Pokemon. And as you can see, it's almost on level with us. It's 1 level below. I go for Bite. It's doing about a quarter. Shadow Rush actually gets through and takes down my Teddiursa. And here's where I was saying the Carvanha is going to be kind of helpful. And there is a gimmick that I'm going to be abusing throughout this entire run, and that's the fact that Shadow Pokemon do not gain experience during battles. They only lose Shadow Meter on their Shadow Gauge, which means that if I have a normal Pokemon out and I swap it out with a Shadow Pokemon, the Shadow Pokemon isn't going to get anything, and my normal Pokemon's going to get the full XP, of course halved with the other one. So it's going to be something I'm going to be using a lot, simply because Shadow Pokemon, while not usually the best, they do tank other Shadow Pokemon moves very well. So they're good swap-ins on things. And just like that, I'm able to take down Lavrina on the first attempt, so pretty good. Now, I decide to come into this place because they have a few items, but more importantly, they have the Focus Band item, which makes it so that you have a 10% chance to survive any fatal attack, and that'll be really useful on our low-level Shadow Pokemon that I'm really just sending in to take an attack or two. So out comes, of course, the obligatory Mirror Bee mention, because you can't have a Pokemon XD video without him, of course. He's a given. And funnily enough, we're actually going to be using him today because he has Voltorb, which isn't really that good of a Pokemon, but the thing is that it's rather speedy, so it's going to be able to, at this point in the game, outspeed some threats and just get a little bit of damage in. It's not especially tanky, but it's fine. And now we move on to another segment of battles at the ONBS building, and while we're here, I do attempt to catch another Shadow Pokemon, but unfortunately I get a crit on return, so there goes Vulpix. And another battle. And then another chance to catch a Shadow Pokemon. Now, Duskull is actually really interesting because it's a Ghost type, meaning that it can swap in on a lot of stuff. And it has Levitate, so if I have Ursaring use Earthquake, it's not going to be hit by it. So it could be useful for later. Another battle, and this one actually is super important because he has a Ralts, which is holding the item Twisted Spoon, which raises all Psychic type moves damage by 10%. So this is going to be a obvious catch, just so Espeon can do even more damage once it gets Psychic. And I got it. And now we beat Exol. Now I haven't actually shown Exol for ages, just because I usually lose to him. And nothing's different, I lose to him again. So anyway, we're now at the Real Game Tower. We're going to pick up our normal moves. And as you can see, our money situation is not great. I'm sitting at 1,000 Pokédollars. Like, I can't even afford some of the stuff I want, so here I am having to go through my inventory to go sell stuff now. Whether or not I shouldn't have sold that magnet is a question, because it could have been useful later, but also not really. Anyway, so now I can actually buy Protect, which is going to be pretty useful. And I'm going to teach Teddiursa Hidden Power right away over the move Lick. Now, whether or not that's the correct move, I'm not sure, because Lick does have that small chance to paralyze, but also Lick's a pretty bad move. And unfortunately for us, the Teddiursa is Hidden Power Poison, which really doesn't help it in any meaningful way, because it's not like grass types are all that much of a threat anyway. So eventually I will get rid of it, but also it is just another type to have on hand, so I'll keep it for the moment. Phoenix City has 9 opponents that you have to face throughout the area, and as you'll see in just a moment, these two are actually a bit scary, because I can only save before the first one, so I either have to take them both on, or I need to, well, you'll see what I do in just a moment, because right after this fight, I decide to do just that. Now for boss fights where you have to fight them right after another trainer, I have decided that in order to get no experience, I'm just going to let myself lose. Now I'm not sure if that's really in the spirit of the run, but I think it gives me a better shot of actually beating them, and I don't have to, if I lose, reset and then go back to the trainer prior to him. So I think this is the best solution. So anyway, I'm just going to let myself lose here, and we'll go ahead and start off fresh now for the actual first attempt. Now of course the Teddiursa and Espeon are leading, but that isn't always going to be the best lead, simply because I do want the experience on them. I go for Bite, and it's not even doing half to Quagsire, which is a little scary, and that did quite a bit to me. And as you can see, we're actually on par with his levels right now, so this is going to be a little scary. I decide to target the Lantern with Espeon, just so, as you can see there, it does get a flinch, and since Teddiursa is faster than the Quagsire, it can take it down. I level up to level 27. Out comes Lunatone, who should be a one-shot with Bite, I would hope. So I decide to go for that, and I return into the fish. And Bite is only doing half. Okay, well, it sets up Shadow Sky. Now luckily I do have a few Shadow Pokemon that can kind of just tank the Shadow Sky for the few turns that it's up. So I am going to do that this next turn. And having Shadow Pokemon out on the field is actually probably pretty good, just because I'm not going to be taking much damage from the Lunatone, and I'll be doing super effective damage against the Lantern. So here comes Carvana, who has the Focus Band, and Voltorb, who could have been holding the magnet, but oh well. Now that actually did do quite a bit of damage. I didn't think it'd do so much, but having the electric resist is kind of nice. Lantern's getting pretty low on health. I go for Shadow Blitz and Shadow Rush. Never mind, Shadow Panic. I think what I was thinking here was if I could just get them confused, and they do just like that, hit themselves in confusion, I won't have to worry about them so much. Carvana does go down, unfortunately. So I decide to swap back into Teddiursa, because the Shadow Pebbles should start almost taking down the Lantern, but I should be able to take it down this turn with our speedy Voltorb. So I use Shadow Rush into Lantern. And another lucky Confusion hit. Lantern goes down. And then out comes his next Pokemon, which is Castform. I go for Metal Claw to take down the Lunatone. And I do get an attack boost, but also it's a little dangerous for Teddiursa to stay out here because Metang is just going to hit it hard. And also Castform is probably going to attack into it. So with that, I decide to go ahead and swap out Teddiursa. And yeah, into Duskull. And this is the only problem with having Shadow Pokemon, is that Shadow fights are pretty slow. Because if you only have Shadow moves, you're not really doing that much damage. On top of that, all my Pokemon, all the Shadow Pokemon are pretty low level. I've just been holding on to them as more or less meat shields, just to take some damage. So while they are somewhat effective, they're not amazing. I did actually get a lucky paralysis there. But Voltorb goes down after just a few turns. And now I send out Espeon because I want the experience. Shadow Wave, doing basically nothing. But it's the best move it's got, so I may as well keep doing it. I decide to swap into Ralts. And the only reason I swapped Espeon in was to get that experience. Metang uses Confusion, taking down my Duskull. So I am actually going to swap back into Espeon now. Castform gets a lucky paralysis, and I decide to bite into the Metang, and Ralts actually gets the move Reflect, which will lower all the physical attacks incoming, which is pretty nice for Espeon, because it is rather frail on the physical side. So I'm going to set that up immediately. And as you can see here, it still did a decent chunk, but it definitely lowered probably a decent amount. Anyway, another bite should take down the Metang. Okay, not quite. Thunder Punch comes out, nearly KOing Ralts. And Shadow Wave should take down the Metang now. And now it's just the Castform, which isn't really a threat at all now. So I swap back into Teddiursa, and the duo of Espeon and Teddiursa should be able to take it down. And just like that, we beat Snettle on the first real attempt. So, not too bad. And now we're back to the grind of fighting random trainers. We fight Chobin. And then we fight Robo Groudon Chobin, which is just Chobin with better Pokemon. And then we fight this guy on the SS Libra, the only fight in this area. And then I fight Zook, who is fairly strong. In fact, so strong that after losing to him, I decided to reset the game and try to fight him again. And that's just because I really need the experience on Teddiursa, specifically, because it is only a level away from evolving into its perfect form. Now we move on to the Outskirts Sand, where we once again have to fight Mirror V. And after this battle, we get access to our Ursaring, which is going to be very helpful because it gets the Guts ability, which makes it so that if it has any status effect on it, it's going to be doing a ton more damage with its attacks. So, we go out of the train, and we fight this guy named Ryder Willie, who has some amazing music that I use usually on Eldis. And here we are going through the Snag'em base. The Snag'em base has only 4 required battles before Gonzep, which is a little scary because we're starting to get into the late game, and I'm still only level 30. Now I decide to teach Rest over Refresh because it basically does what Refresh does, but better. And right around the corner here, I'm able to get the move Psychic, which I'm going to teach immediately to Espeon, just because it's going to be its strongest move throughout the rest of the game. And basically the only move it uses unless I'm looking for flinches, or unless something is resistant or immune to it. So we fight one more trainer before we head up the stairs to Gonzep's office, and we fight this guy, who we take out with ease. But just like before in the Snaddle fight, there's no way I'm winning this fight based on how my Pokemon are. I said with ease, it wasn't quite ease. As you can see, my Espeon's a little low and the Ursaring's paralyzed. So after a quick loss, I decide to come right back and do it again. But as you can see this time, I decided to change my lead to both Shadow Pokemon, and that's because of the Fake Out strategy that he has here. And also the Ralts is going to trace the static ability from Electrode, which just so happens to work on it. So now the Electrode is paralyzed, so it's not really that fast anymore. I decide to go for Return into it though. A little risky, but also if the Ursaring does get paralyzed, that means that it will be doing a ton more damage due to the Guts ability. So it could be a good thing. Not quite a one-shot, unfortunately. Hyper Beam comes out. The Nuzleaf is always going to use Hyper Beam. So it's always going to be on a pattern of recharging. And unfortunately, the Electrode does actually get through the paralysis, but I'm able to take it down this turn. And I'm going to attack the next Pokemon that comes out, which is going to be Vileplume. So Electrode goes down. And out comes the said Vileplume. I go for Return, doing more than half to it. Nuzleaf has to recharge, so now we double into the Vileplume once again to do the same strategy. And that's something that's very neat about double battles, is you can really just focus one Pokemon and just kind of bore a hole through a team if you can actually take it down in a single hit, or with 3 hits. One Pokemon being faster than the other. Now, I would do the same strategy, but his next Pokemon is going to be Skarmory, so Return isn't going to be doing that much damage to it, so I decide to take down the Nuzleaf now. And now I can swap out Espeon whenever I want, because it's already seen the last Pokemon, so it's going to get experience no matter what. And it's up to level 34, which is only 2 levels higher than his Pokemon, so that's a bit scary. I decide to go for Return anyway though, because it is going to do the most amount of damage. And Carvana is just here to take some shots, which it took 1, I guess. Now Duskull is a little awkward here, because if I can't take it down in a couple moves, that means that Ursaring is going to be the one taking a Hyper Beam, because Duskull is immune to normal type moves. So another Return. A crit, that's pretty nice. I decided to go for Confuse Ray. And that was just to waste a turn if it needed. Which it didn't. And Steel Wing takes down the Duskull, so I swap back into Espeon. And one last Return should take it down. Okay, maybe not. But it's fairly close. Anyway, a Bite does the job. And that was Gonzap on the second attempt, but really first. So we're back at Zook again, who we're basically just going to skip this time. The Shadow Zangoose could be nice, but also I'm not really in need of a strong physical attacker. So we're now in the Pyramid area, which has 11 required fights, before Gorgon that is. So I'm just going to kind of breeze through these. They're not really all that strong at this point, because I have a full power return, and also the levels seem to have dipped a bit from before. It seemed like the Snag'em base was definitely starting to rise up, and now I'm actually a pretty decent level ahead of him. I get the move Slash here. I decide to get rid of Hidden Power Poison, just because it's not all that useful, and honestly I'm going to get rid of it in a few minutes anyway. So here we are, still just kind of taking them down. That one was actually kind of annoying because that jump bluff was faster than Ursaring and used Leech Seed. And if you know that battle, I needed something to actually take down the Shedinja. That's part of the reason why I chose Espeon. And at the top of the pyramid, I get access to the move Earthquake, which I'm going to teach to Ursaring immediately and get rid of Slash. And Earthquake is really good because it lets you breeze through the last area of the game fairly easily, and this next boss. And at the same time, I teach Protect to Espeon, that way I can lead them at the same time, and actually be able to use Earthquake without damaging my own partner. And after this next battle, we'll go right into the fight with Gorgon. So here we are at Gorgon now. And his whole gimmick is Protect and Earthquake. So it's not really that strong a strategy anyway, but it's the same one I'm going to be using against him, so maybe I'm just wrong. Anyway, Celio actually survives by a thread, which is a little unfortunate. I was hoping to do damage to his next Pokemon, which is Slowking. And this turn, I can now use Protect, and Ursaring can use Earthquake, and we'll see how much damage that does. So it's doing... Okay, so it takes down the Lairon, and takes the Slowking below half, so that's pretty good. Unfortunately, this turn I can't use Earthquake, otherwise I risk hitting Espeon, or I could just swap into a different Pokemon just to take the hit, but I wouldn't really want to do that because I'm going to get another Pokemon swapped in anyway, so I'd have to swap Espeon back out and then back in. Anyway, I'm rambling. Out comes Primeape, his first Shadow Pokemon. I decide to Psychic it just to get it off the field, and I go for a return into Ursaring. Psychic should take it down, which it does. And then out comes his second Shadow Pokemon, which is Hypno. This thing is kinda strong, but more just defensive. Now, it's not actually a one-shot, unfortunately. Brick Break is doing about half to me. But now that I'm at his last Pokemon, I can swap out any time. So I decided to go for Earthquake here, just to take down the Ursaring. But yeah, if I'm ever feeling pressured to get out of there, perfectly fine too now, and I'll get as much experience as I can. Earthquake takes down the Ursaring, and it's going to do a decent chunk to Hypno. And a Bite should be able to take it down. Which it does. So that's Gorgon first try. Pretty easy. Now the strange thing to say here is that I thought this was going to be very challenging and it was going to take a long time, but we're actually on par with a lot of the better Pokemon on the tier list right now. We're going to this area at 3 hours and 34 minutes at 2 times speed. So, you know, we're in the range of good Pokemon like Vaporeon and Blastoise. So I do have some hopes that this is actually going to be a pretty fast run. Now, we're now at Citydark Isle, and before Lavrina there are 4 fights, all of which aren't actually too bad. We get through them pretty fine because there is a heal station just at the entrance of this place, so I can just constantly go back and forth if I need to. And so that leads us right into Lavrina. So she leads with a Gardevoir and a Gorbis. The Gardevoir and the Gorbis both have Attract, so any Pokemon with the opposite gender you should go after first, which in this case is Gorbis. And since I have 2 Pokemon, I can actually go after both at the same time. Now, I don't know if the single Pokemon tunneling strategy would have been better, but I think the Gardevoir's obviously too much of a risk to be kept alive with damage like that. So I take it down right after it hits me, and out comes her first Shadow Pokemon, which is Farfetch'd. This thing is usually a pretty big threat because it can use the move Shadow Panic, which confuses you. And not just that, it's a spread confusion move, so it can hit both of the Pokemon. But it's not really too big a deal this time, because if I did get hit by it, I could just swap out to get rid of the effect. Anyway, Roselia sets up Leech Seed, which isn't really going to do too much. And I'm able to take down the Altaria this turn, so I can take down the Roselia with my other Pokemon. And that should be Lovrina first attempt. And pretty easy, might I add. Like, I'm only a few levels higher than her. So let's hope that this keeps up, and I don't have to struggle through these last few battles. Also, there's no reason to teach Snore. Snore's a pretty bad move. I don't really want to be asleep all the time. Anyway, after quite a few more battles to get to the top, 11 in fact, we will then be facing our next boss of the game. But of course, I'm going to show just all of these just to give you a sense of... See, I've never really done a very in-depth walkthrough of this game. Like the Eevee video, my first video, which really isn't all that good, but if you did want to watch it, you could, is my most walkthrough-y type of gameplay, and even then, I skip huge segments of story, just because I recorded it all, and then I left it on the back burner for a year. So, oh, and also I'm burned here, so I'm going to try to keep the burn as long as possible. Anyway, back to what I was saying. So yeah, you'll actually be able to sit here and enjoy a lot of the fights with me. And you can see the variety of Pokemon I have to face. And I think this also shows why Venusaur might not be that good of a Pokemon in this game as well. Just because you've already seen so many steel flying, grass poison, bug flying. Like, we're fighting two right here. And that battle took forever with Venusaur because I was only using Razor Leaf. So, anyway, what's fun about this battle is you can use Earthquake to take down both Pokemon right off the bat. And this guy has a Chansey and a Scyther. Anyway, on to Snaddle, who is at the top of the mountain. He brings out a Metang and a Quagsire. I bring out my Espeon and Ursaring, and you can see I've kept the burn all the way through, and I've had to use a few ethers and elixirs just to keep up the amount of health I have and PP. I'm able to take down the Metang in a single hit, and surprisingly not able to take down the Quagsire in a single hit. I really thought it was going to go down. He gets off a Mud Shot, but Ursaring's already kinda slow anyway, so it shouldn't be that big of a deal. And then I use Bite into Scizor, hoping for a bit of flinch luck, and I use Return to take down the Quagsire, because it should still be slower than me. And I do actually get the flinch. And the Quagsire goes down, and then he brings out his Solrock, which unfortunately does have Levitate, so I can't just use Earthquake this turn. I actually have to try to take it down. So, I use Bite into it, and then I use Return, or Metal Claw. Metal Claw is super effective against rock. Never mind. Yeah, I used Metal Claw to take it down. Surprisingly, it doesn't actually take it down either. But luckily, the Metal Claw is able to take it down. Now, if you notice my health on the Ursaring, I'm getting fairly low, so I can either get rid of the burn by resting, or I can go all in on a last Earthquake to get as much damage as possible. That way I can get out of a possibly dangerous situation coming up. And so I decide to do just that. We salute you, Ursaring, for all that you've done. You were the... oh, that was close. You were the bravest of bears. And it's able to take down the Scizor. And it's able to take down the Cast Form. Espeon levels up to 49. And out comes the Starmie, his Shadow Pokemon. Now this thing is pretty dangerous. And unfortunately, the Fruity Pebbles do take down my bear. We salute you. Now out comes the Voltorb now, because I do actually have super effective damage against it. And I'm going to go for Bite into it, or Psychic, so I'm not doing super effective damage, because I actually have a plan. I want to catch this. Okay, the crit's a little scary, and I got... ooh! Okay, and it fires right back. Unfortunately, now that Voltorb is going to be using Swift into it, it might actually just take it down. So I might not even get it anyway. Never mind, it hangs on by a thread. So I go for my Ultra Ball to go catch it. And Voltorb I'll just call to keep it from damaging it. Come on, stay in the ball. And we got Starmie first try. Okay. Snaddled down, first attempt. Now, we actually head down the mountain in order to get our Starmie, but at the same time, I'm going to run to Finac City to go pick up as many proteins as I can. There's a strategy I want to do for the end of the game that may or may not be good or bad. I'm not sure. Anyway, we now move on to our next fight against Ardos, who leads with a Swellow and an Alakazam. Now I lead with my normal lead, because I want to be able to outspeed and destroy the bird as quick as possible. And Ursaring is fairly good anyway, and it'll be doing a good amount of damage to Kingdra whenever it comes out. So Swellow goes down. I level up to level 49, which I can learn the move Thrash. Thrash is a pretty bad move. Out comes Kingdra. Alakazam actually uses Ice Punch instead of Psychic. I thought it was going to attack the Ursaring. So I'm sitting at pretty high health. Now, this is the turn where I decide I'm going to go for Protect and Earthquake. Because I like Protect and Earthquake. It's going to take down the Kingdra, and it's going to probably take down the Alakazam. So down goes Kingdra. And down goes Alakazam. So now he's going to go into his next two Pokemon, which are Heracross, which resists Earthquake, and his Electabuzz, which is going to lose to it. But unfortunately, since I have to wait a turn on Protect, I'm just going to Psychic and attack. Which Psychic's not enough to take down Electabuzz, and it uses Shadow Half. Okay, well that's a little scary, but at least I'll be able to one-shot the Heracross. As long as it's not faster than me. It's faster than me. And it takes me down. Okay, well that's not really what I wanted. So I decide to send out the Starmie now, because it's going to do the most amount of damage to Heracross, and I can focus on taking down the Electabuzz. So Electabuzz goes down, and then out comes the big bad Snorlax. And this is the next part of my plan. That really didn't do anything, huh? I thought it'd do more than that. And Double Edge takes down my Espeon. Okay, well this is going to be a slow battle, but perfectly on track for what I'm trying to do. So, Snorlax's only move is a move called Shadow End. It's a 50-50 on whether or not it hits, but every time it does, it sets his health to half. So, that means that in order to catch the Snorlax, it's best just to leave a whole bunch of Shadow Pokemon out on the field to just take hits until it gets down to a low enough health to where you can start throwing Pokeballs. So it got its first one there, now we're at half health. So I'm going to send out another Shadow Pokemon. And really just any fodder will do, it's just that Shadow Pokemon are what I have on hand. I go for a Bite. If I was faster than it, that might be an issue, but Carvanha definitely is not. And the Shadow Storms are doing just about as much damage as he's healing from leftovers. So I'm just going to keep using that. As long as I don't get an unlucky crit, I should be fine. So I decide one more turn of damage. Because the lower he is, if Shadow End hits, the lower health he's going to have. But at this turn, I'm going to throw my first Pokeball. And that first Pokeball is an item that I got just below us. It is a Timer Ball, which depending on the number of turns the battle has gone on for, it makes the Pokeball stronger. And since it is his last Pokemon, it's going to be fairly strong. I don't think it's been 16 turns just yet for the max power, but it's definitely been quite a few turns. So another Timer Ball. And another Shadow Storm to keep his health down. Come on, stay in the ball, Snorlax. Okay, well, third tries the charm, right? Shadow Storm comes out and gets a critical hit. Okay, that's a little scary, but... Oh, he's at so low health now. I think we're perfect. So I go for item, or timer ball, and I think I just call this turn, just because I don't want to risk taking it down. Never mind, I swapped to Duskull. It's same effect either way. And third time's the charm. And we beat Ardos. First attempt. So that's pretty good. And we got a Snorlax, which is going to be very helpful. So at this point, here's where those proteins come in handy. I'm just going to feed most of them to Snorlax, because if those Shadow Ends can just hit something, that's going to be really good. And now we lead into the Gorgon fight, which really nothing changes between Gorgon before and now, other than he's got some slightly stronger Pokemon. But the idea is still basically the same. He's going to use Protect. I attack the Pokemon that's going to use Earthquake. I then Protect. I use Earthquake. And they take a ton of damage. It's just how it is. Now, Return's not actually really that good here, but it's better than Earthquaking by Espeon, so I'd rather do that. And now I can get the Earthquake off and take down the Aggron. And probably do a ton of damage to Ursaring. Yep. Now comes Walrein. Now the Ursaring actually misses a Slash, which is quite nice. And since Ursaring protects here, I'm going to double into the Walrein to take it down, because one Psychic's not enough, but Return should finish it off. And then we'll get to his first Shadow Pokemon, which is a Shadow Poliwrath. And this thing is annoying because it always sets up Shadow Sky, but that also means it's not really a threat on the first turn. So Earthquake should take it down. It is half fighting type. And I am faster than the opponent's Ursaring, so I should be able to take it down with a Return before it can attack me. Which I do. And then it's just Mr. Mime. And Mr. Mime might be faster than Ursaring, but a Bite should probably be able to take it down. Okay, maybe not. Shadow Storm does very little to Espeon, and not too much to Ursaring either, surprisingly. Anyway, Mr. Mime goes down and we beat Gorgon fairly easily. There's this one battle before I get to the second final boss. And here we are at Eldis, who can be a pretty big threat. I'm hoping he's not this time, because he's definitely a wall for a lot of Pokemon. I go for Psychic into Ninjask, and I go for Return into Manectric. I am risking a Static Bell. I should have probably swapped those. Psychic into the Manectric and then Return into the Ninjask. But it doesn't end up actually hurting me at all. He leads out his second Pokemon, which is a Shadow Salamence, which is going to lower our attacks. Return actually doesn't take down the Manectric. Okay. I thought it was going to be a one-shot. Okay, well that's a little scary now, because it's going to be spamming Shadow End, which is very strong. But I guess we're just going to have to gamble on the 50-50s. Shadow Hold makes it so we can't switch now, meaning that these Pokemon are basically doomed if they go down. Shadow End hits, and nearly takes down Espeon. But unfortunately it is going to go down to Fruity Pebbles, but not before it gets a one last cheeky level up in. But there goes Espeon. And now I have to figure out what I want to replace it with. I think the correct choice, though, is probably Starmie. It's my strongest Pokemon, and it's got a spread move. So I'm going to use Shadow Storm, and I'm going to use Return into Flygon to take it down, because I think Shadow Storm should be able to take down the Manectric, right? That's doing quite a bit of damage, and it's not even enough to take down Manectric. Okay, well, maybe that backfired just a bit, but Return does take down the Flygon. And then out comes Marowak, who is quite a threat, because it has the Thick Club item, which doubles its attack stat. Not its moves, it doubles its attack stat. And you know what that means? It's a part of our secret plan to beat the end of the game. That's right, we're gonna try to catch Marowak here. We might lose, but, you know, if I can, I'd really like to actually catch it. So I go for Shadow Storm. It's doing very little to the Marowak, and I actually take down the main Ectric now. And out comes Lapras. It's always going to set up Shadow Storm on the first turn. I go for Earthquake just to maximize damage. The Starmie does take a hit there, but it's not too bad. And the thing with Marowak is... Hold on. Okay, well it does take down the Ursa Ring and lowers its health. But because Marowak's more of a common Pokemon, it's not actually that big a deal to actually catch. Unlike the Snorlax, which was pretty hard, I think Marowak shouldn't be too bad. But just in case, I'm going to just let it use another Shadow End if it hits, and lower its health just a little bit with Shadow Storm. And of course, do a little bit of damage to Lapras as well to try and take it down. And as you can see, a lot of Shadow battles, they're pretty slow just because the Pokemon can't really do too much damage to each other. But it also makes it easier to actually catch Shadow Pokemon, so that's pretty good. Anyway, a Shadow End does very little, and it halves our Snorlax's health. Now, something I should have kept in mind is there are Pokemon later that I could have caught with Shadow Rush. That way I'm not risking losing half my health, but it doesn't actually end up being that much of a deal. So, anyway, the Marowak should be caught. It's not that strong a Pokemon. And just like that, it gets caught right away. And because of the Thick Club item, it's going to be doing a ton of damage, hopefully. A Lucky Paralysis on Spark. And now it's just the battle of take down Lapras, which is going to take a little bit. But at least the Voltorb has a move that isn't a Shadow move. Lapras uses Shadow Storm. Takes down my Voltorb, unfortunately. It would have been nice to try and take it down, but that's alright. I still have Duskull, which should be able to do it. And the Snorlax really isn't hurting on health either. So I decide to go for a Confuse Ray. But the Shadow End comes out, I'm able to take down Lapras and beat Eldest first try, so that's pretty good. And so we move right into the end of the game. But before we can get to the final boss, we have to beat the Big Box Legendary, which is Shadowlugia. And the thing is because these battles are back-to-back, I'm not actually going to save. I'm just going to do this battle, and then the next one. And the main reason is what you just saw me do right there. Maybe it's a little too easy, just catching him with the Master Ball, but also, the option is always there. And it's really not worth hurting my Pokemon before I go into the final battle, just because I want to be more fair with it, I guess. And on top of that, being fair, his entire team is Shadow Pokemon, so technically speaking, I could always use the Master Ball on his last Pokemon just to guarantee a victory. So I think what I've done there is probably the most correct thing I could do. Anyway, Psychic's doing a little over half to Moltres, which isn't great, but it's pretty good. Return takes it down, and then out comes Executor, who is fairly strong. I don't really have anything to do a ton of damage to it other than Bite. Ooh, and that's a little unfortunate. Okay, so a Shadow End takes down my Espeon. I go into Starmie. But now I'm going to do very little damage to both of them. So I decide to return here, see how much damage I actually do to the Executor. A critical hit does very little. And I'm doing about half-ish. A little over. So I should be able to take it out this turn. Shadow Wind misses. I go for another Shadow Storm. And another return to take down the Executor. And the thing is in this fight, you really want to have a normal Pokemon. Not normal type, just a non-Shadow Pokemon. For the legendary birds. Just because otherwise you're not doing all that much damage. And whoa! That did way more damage than I thought it would. I'm so used to being so over-leveled by this point that usually those Shadow moves only do about a third. But that was over half. Okay, so Rhydon goes down, that's pretty nice. And then out comes Articuno, who is pretty threatening now. Because unlike Espeon, Ursaring isn't all that much of a good special defense tank. The Fruity Pebbles are raining down. And honestly, the best move I could do is probably swap out Ursaring, but at this point, since it's a first attempt, I decide to try to use Rest. But I think Ursaring is the slowest thing on the field, so it is going to get hit by the Shadow Chill, and unfortunately go down. So now we're in the Battle of Stall. The only Pokemon with actually super effective damage at this point is the Voltorb, which is why I send it out. It can do Spark to the Articuno to actually get a little bit of damage in. Or it can try to go for Confusion. Confusion might actually be better just because it can kind of hinder all the other Pokemon. But unfortunately, it's only level 19, so it is much, much slower than everything else on the field. So it is going to get taken down right off the bat. Shadow Chill comes out into Marowak. And Marowak's not really all that specially tanky either. So it's going to be taken down in just a few turns. So I go for Shadow Break now, because single target damage is going to be a little bit stronger than both target damage. And I'm really hoping just to do as much damage to... Oh, that's unfortunate. To the Tauros as I can. Okay, well, getting frozen isn't very lucky. Another Shadow Break, and I'm just kind of hoping to get a Shadow Panic off. And a Shadow Chill will take down... Oh, never mind. It didn't target the Marowak for some reason. Okay, well that's lucky. Shadow Panic. And I confuse the Tauros. Well, that's unfortunate. I was going to get rid of the Tauros this turn. Okay, well, I guess I'll just use Shadow End. Or Tauros takes himself down with it. Okay, you know what, that's actually probably the best outcome. And now it's just Zapdos and Articuno. Articuno uses another Shadow Chill, takes down my Marowak. So at this point, it's just Snorlax and Starmie. And I think I should probably have it. Ooh. That's doing very little. Okay, Shadow End. Gotta see how much that's gonna do. Now it is only a 50-50 shot of whenever I get it. And on top of that, it is just kind of wasting turns. An unfortunate crit there, so I am a lot lower than I would have been. It lowers my health a lot, and it could miss wasting turns. I got a crit there, and it did about a fourth-ish. And I'm taking a ton of damage from the both of them. So I decided to call here, just so I can get some more health back, because if I'm taking half my health of damage with Shadow End, that's not really good. But unfortunately, as you can see there, it's not looking good, actually, because Snorlax surprisingly can't take these hits too well. I really thought Snorlax was just going to completely block them. But as you can see, it is actually starting to lose the war of attrition. And eventually it's just Starmie. And Starmie's pretty good, but it's not that good. And you can see the damage it's actually putting out is pitiful. So in just a couple turns, Starmie will go down. So I think I know a strategy for taking him down, but we'll have to see that in the next fight. So here we are at the second attempt. I caught the Lugia just as before with the Master Ball, and I have changed up our lead. So now I have Marowak and Espeon. Marowak has the Shadow Panic move, which could be very useful for just shutting down some Pokemon early on. And on top of that, Espeon can take down the Rhyhorn Rhydon in a single hit, which is pretty good. So there's Shadow Panic. It's going to confuse the Executor. Unfortunately, it doesn't hit the Moltres, but honestly, that's not too bad. I go for Protect here, just to waste a turn. But unfortunately, they go to Marowak and Shadow Hold? Okay. I don't think I've ever seen it use Shadow Hold, so that's pretty strange. And surprisingly, Shadow End is doing very little damage. So I decide to use Psychic on Moltres. And it's not quite taking it down. Another Shadow Fire. Once again into Marowak. Gets burned, but that's alright. Shadow End comes out and takes down the Marowak. But at this point, the Executor should be in range to be taken down as well. And I'm trying to figure out who's the best Pokemon to lead next. Ursaring seems kind of tempting, and I decide to go for it, but also I kind of want that non-Shadow Pokemon for the end. But if we can take down both of these Pokemon and start doing a ton of damage to the next Pokemon that comes out, I think we'll be in good spot. And because Executor is confused, it's not nearly as dangerous as it normally would be, because it has to get past a 50% chance of not hitting, and a 25 or so % chance of being confused. So now Tauros comes out, and it's sitting pretty low, probably in range of a Psychic, so I decide to swap out Ursaring for Snorlax here, and take down the Tauros before it can set up Shadow Sky. And a critical hit. I'm not sure if it was necessary, but it definitely felt good. Out comes Articuno, who, as you saw before, is quite a big threat, all things considered. So I go for Shadow End, and I'm not sure if Psychic's the right move. I think I would have gone for Bite in hindsight, but it just goes for Shadow Sky anyway. And so it's not actually doing any damage. But these are my two best special defense Pokemon, so I don't think a Shadow Chill would have taken down Espeon anyway. Another Psychic. Nearly taking it down. Shadow Rush. Okay, well, I don't think I've seen it use Shadow Rush either, so I didn't even know it had a physical move. Anyway, I send out Voltorb now. Shadow End comes out, and it takes Snorlax to about half. Unfortunately, our Shadow End misses, so Articuno is still on the field. I go for another Shadow End, and I decide to Spark the Articuno. But unfortunately, it targets the Voltorb. Okay, so now I send out Starmie, because they only really need to be chipped down a little bit to actually be taken down. And perhaps in hindsight, maybe I should have just led with used Starmie before instead of Voltorb, because it only really needs that little bit of chip damage to take them both down. And Voltorb could have been something to swap into just to take a hit. And surprisingly, Articuno survives. Well, as long as Snorlax doesn't actually get the Shadow in this turn, I will still be in a really good spot. And of course it gets it. Hey, thanks Snorlax, you're really doing your part here. Anyway, at this point I still have 3 Pokemon. It is going to take a while to actually take down the Zapdos, but I don't think I'm actually in any danger. Okay, a Paralysis isn't very lucky. But once again, I'm doing very little damage to the Zapdos. But I think if I want a safe switch in for Ursaring, I am just going to have to let one of my Pokemon faint. So, a critical hit. I am still doing a decent amount of damage, it's just going to take quite a few turns. Snorlax is at 30 HP. Shadow Bolt comes out. And surprisingly, doesn't target the Snorlax. I think it could have taken it down. Shadow Wind misses, so now I'm up to 42. Another bolt. Maybe not. It did about 22 damage, so maybe I would have survived. He's paralyzed. Shadow Storm, Shadow Sky. Huh. Okay. Well, I'm not sure how helpful Shadow Sky is at this point. And I think we've just about done it. One or two more Shadow Ends and or Shadow Storms should take down the Zapdos. And to be fair, at this point, I could just capture Zapdos. That's always an option. So, honestly, I think if we're talking minimum battles on average, I think this game might have the easiest minimum battles challenge of probably about any Pokemon game. Because after you get past the mountain area of Citadel Isle and you get to the top area, there's so many good Shadow Pokemon you can pick up. And also, if I really wanted to, I could have de-Shadowfied the Snorlax. The only reason I didn't is because there is a optional fight at the bottom of the quick elevator all the way down to the beginning. So I would have had to walk all the way through the mountain once again, which is kind of annoying and a bit of a trick. And that probably would have helped a bit, but also it's not like it was even that hard. And here's the thing. This only took 9 hours, 44 minutes, and 48 seconds at 1 times speed, or 4 hours, 52 minutes, and 24 seconds at 2 times speed. Both of our Pokemon ended at level 51, the 2 non-Shadow, and I only really lost 10 times throughout the entire game. A couple of those were right before bosses, a couple of those were mandatory fights that you can lose, and then I had about 5 resets throughout the run where either I lost to a mandatory fight, or I just wanted more experience from a mandatory fight. So, in all seriousness, this run is super easy, pretty fun, and there's a lot of variation you could do. I chose Espeon. I could easily see Vaporeon being good. Umbreon could be good. Jolteon might be okay. And even like Flareon would be probably pretty fun. So, and just one thing, altogether, that's only 86 battles throughout the entire game. I'm surprised I even got up to level 50. I thought this was going to be a level 45 type of game. Money was an issue throughout, and obviously a few other factors like just not having a ton of type coverage, because Ursaring, while being very strong, is kind of kept to normal type moves, and Espeon is mostly a special psychic and dark type attacker. So, with that being said, I'd like to thank you for watching. If you'd like to see other videos that aren't quite minimum battles but are single Pokemon and trio runs, I just had a series finish with the 3 Kanto starters and their evolution lines. And if you thought this was a good video, consider liking, subscribing, and please leave a comment down below. If there is a Pokemon you want to see, put it down below, because I would really like some suggestions. Anyway, bye.